a lot of developments fail there because, people, like I always use this example, you think that your kids are the best in town, then, they are the most wonderful kids and the most behaved kids in the world. But you need to test your kids out from other people's eyes. And then you would see the true value, because every parents love their kids, to the end of the world. And, property development is basically that. You would think that your development is, the best development in the world, and it's the best thing that you're doing in the suburb. And, people should kneel and bow to you for being, so kind to do this development for them. Understand that, the lender does not care what you think of your development. You're listening to Helpmebuy Property Podcast, powered by Investor Partner Group. We help improve lifestyles by building scalable and sustainable generational wealth and passive income streams. We do this via our ecosystem that is a one-stop shop to all property investment needs, from evidence-based, data-driven buyer's agency, industry-renowned portfolio reviews and property strategies, property development with and for clients, tax, SMSF, business structures advisory, and cash flow real estate. Everything we do is to help people achieve financial independence and not just basic financial freedom by using property as a tool and as a medium. Presently, we've launched Australian Property Academy, where we are training and teaching buyer's agents, property advisors, property strategic partners, and secrets to finding investor-grade properties to astute investors. Connect now to experience it yourself, or drop in a line below at info@helpmebuy.com.au to get more information. Be kind and happy investing. Today's topic is 12 things that a property development lender would look out for before giving lending to you for the next project. Now, it's important to know what the lenders are looking out for before they decide to invest in your project. So listen to the very end, because there are golden nuggets at the very end. This is a 2-part episode, so don't just bypass the second episode, because that's where the crux of the conversation is. Let me drum roll and bring in Cheryl. Hello, Miss Cheryl. How are you today?
Awesome as always. So, Moss, are we talking about any commercial lender, whether it's a bank or private lender? This applies to all of them, or just private lending?
No, this applies to pretty much all the bank finance or construction finance lending. We are in the realms of project development. And so this is not for a single house and land, or just a land to build a house. We are talking about multi-units, apartments, etc., all of those things. And so what would be the eyes of the lender, and how would they be looking at your project, and what questions do you need to almost proactively predict and have answers to before you go down the path of identifying a lender?
Yeah, absolutely. And particularly if you're, if you say, for example, you're not using a broker and you're wanting to present your deal to different lenders as well, it's probably something that you want to start to put into of its own, because these are questions that will come up and they will be asked. And so we did say it's going to be a 2-part process. We're probably going to go through about 6 in this one and another 6 in the next one. So it's got a bit of detail. So let's dive into it, shall we?
Yes, 100%. And the most important thing also as part of this is when people or developers are doing information of memorandum, or typically known as IMs in our language, these are the 12 key things that you need to answer as to the lender as well. I know everyone is focused towards the investor and they show the profits and the gentrification in the area. The lender is looking at completely different things. And so sometimes the IM does not hit the mark because they are not looking at these 12 things. So let's jump right into this. Now, every experienced property development lender who's out there, they would have always heard about the 5 C's, the credit, the character, the capacity, the cash flow, the capital, and the collateral. Or should I say the 6 C's now? And we are going to basically demystify some of these things through these 12 things that a development lender would always ask for. Do you want to, do the honors and talk about the first one, Cheryl?
Yeah, I'm going to, actually one that I want to throw in right at the very beginning is when you're presenting your deal to a lender, the first thing they're going to really want to understand is, what is the deal? What is
Yes.
the nature of the deal? Where are you investing?
Yes.
And we're going to want to look at your feasibility of your numbers.
Yes.
And there,
Yes.
so you need to ensure that you've got your feasibility there, but they're also going to cross-check, right? So if you're saying you're building 8 townhouses in rural wherever, in regional whichever, they are going to also have a look to see whether it's going to be viable, that you're going to get those sales prices in that area. And they're going to look at past sales of other projects and the outcomes for other projects, just to make sure that they're going to have good outcome with your project. They might find that, the numbers might look good on paper, but in fact, no one's wanting townhouses in regional whoop, right? And that's where they may either, for one, not go for the deal, or two, actually require more equity to be put in place, so to reduce their risk. So I'd say the first thing is what they're going to want to understand is, what is the nature of the deal? Where are you building this? And also really understanding the feasibility of your numbers, not just from the numbers point of view, but from the actual saleability. Ultimately, they want to know how they're going to exit their money out.
Yes. And I think feasibilities play a really big role in a lot of these things, not just, as you said, from a developer's perspective, but also the lender's perspective. But also when you're talking about typically the feasibilities, a lot of people think that this is the end game. No, this is the start of the game. They would usually get the term sheet and they'll get really, really excited that, oh, I've got the term sheet from the lender. That means that they're accepting. No, this is them saying, subject to blah, 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 I'm going to make this offer, right? And so term sheet is not the end of the conversation. It's usually the start of the conversation. You would get the term sheet pretty much very quickly from a lender saying, based on the numbers on a face value, this looks okay. But now the real question basically starts.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so then the other part is, if the lender's happy with your feasibility and the project itself, the second question would be, who is running this project? Right?
Yes.
Who are the people behind it that are running the project? What is the legal ownership of it? And I'm going to pass it over to you because I'm just about to sneeze.
There are 3 key things the lender is trying to understand. So again, these are the 3 key things in the mix as well. So we've talked about the feasibility, which is number 1. The second thing, which is quite important from their perspective, is what is the borrower's legal entity? A lot of people think that legal entities do not play an important part. They do. They really, really play a really important part as to how the deal is structured. Where does the investor sit into the deal? Who is the development manager? Are they coming in as a separate entity? Is the holding entity of the asset a separate entity? And so how do you structure a deal from a lender's perspective is very, very important, so that they know who to hold collateral with. If the deal goes sideways, who are they going to grab for them to get their money out? That's how they are thinking, right? And so they want to make sure that, they have the asset in control. But if the asset does not get what they're looking for when they're taking an exit, they want the directors to be in charge and pierce that veil, corporate veil of, going after their personal assets as well. So it's important, how do you structure a deal? And a lot of developers, you would see that, they'll either bring in company or trust structures to run the developments through an SPV. And so you would have a special purpose entity which would hold the deal or hold the land. And then you would have another entity which would do the development, or we call it the development, entity typically, right? And all the trustees of the beneficiaries basically sits beneath them, preferably with their own trust, so that, the distribution can come into their own trusts, and then the deed of partitions, etc., all of those things. Now, again, please don't constitute this as tax advice or financial planning advice or legal advice. Speak to a good legal person, a legal lawyer and an accountant to identify what is the best structure possible for you. Okay. One key thing that I want to call out here is, don't go around calling your trust X, Y, and Z property development, because, you're excited, you're the first time developer and you're calling your company as superstar developers or, the one developers, Don't do that, because that's a clear signal to, the bank that, you're coming into the development game. And we'll talk at the very end why that's not a good idea.
Sneezing, so that's fine.
Okay. The second thing is, again, a segue from this is who is in charge. And so just because a development identity has been identified, or, the purpose of the borrowing is defined, and, they understand who the primary players are, who's really in charge of the project? Who is the key decision maker? And so you would see that most of the times the developers have the ultimate power and the responsibility in the borrowing entities of controlling the whole operations. But sometimes the way the structures are done is that investors hold majority assets or majority voting rights. And so they can push the developer out at any given point in time too. And so from a lender's perspective, it's very important from their perspective, who is ultimately the controller of the project, who has the beneficial control on this project. Because what they want to do is they want to hold them liable for the project, right? This is also important that, a lot of newbie developers who are coming into transitioning into this space with zero experience, on bigger developments, the bank may not lend them the money because they'll say, oh, you are way too new. You don't have runs on the boards. You're not bringing in enough experience. And so while you are in charge, there is no money on the table. And so sometimes they have to bring in an experienced development manager or a construction manager or a supervisor to basically, fund. It's not so much about funding the deal, it's about providing the relevant experience to the deal.
Don't get yourself taken on a ride by property spookers, so-called property investment advisors, or buyer's agents who are selling house and land packages or off-the-plan properties or apartments. Get yourself a copy of this book called The Millennial's Guide to Property Investing. This book is not just for millennials. The title suggests, but it's actually the most advanced way of investing in property. This book will relate to your clients, your colleagues, and other business owners. There are so many property spookers out there who have come out of the woodwork over the last 3 to 5 years. And there is so much misinformation out there that I had to write a book about all the F-ups that people can actually avoid in order to be super successful in the property investment journey. Some of these are really easy to identify, but they are so costly to fix once these mistakes are made. So it's a short book. It's easy to read. It has a lot of stories. It has a lot of examples, and it is a true guide for people who wants to do it themselves. My name is Moxin Reza. This is my story, and a lot of you will relate to parts of this story if you're not born in the riches and if you're trying to build a property portfolio that can last generations and help you improve your lifestyle along the way. So I give you a chance to come out there and have a read. Be kind, stay safe, keep smiling, keep investing, and please do check out the book.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the other part I just want to sort of point. It's more, so don't feel that if you are starting up as a developer that you're never going to get funding from a commercial lender because of lack of experience. You may have to put in a development manager who does have the experience in, and preferably a breadth of experience across the types of projects that you're wanting to do and other things as well. You do need to ensure that you've taken it into account how much it's going to cost to put a development manager into your project.
Definitely. And then the third thing that is tied to this is what is owned by whom. And so, people bring in complex entities into the mix, and, they'll bring in their own family trust structures where there is 10,000 other people doing 10,000 other things. Lenders don't like it, and it's a funny story. I'll tell you this. And so I have a client who is a really high net worth client. He went to a bank just to get $100,000 loan, and he could potentially get it out of his business, but he was being stingy to pull that cash flow from the business. And so he went to a lender just to get that $100,000. And the lender looked at his profile, and he has 10,000 trusts. And he's like, it's not worth our effort. We don't want to, it's not that we don't want to give you 100,000. It's just that for the amount of effort and the due diligence that we have to go through, this 100,000 does not make sense. So if you change this to a 5 million, then yes, you have a deal. It's important to understand, the more complex deals that you take to the bank, the more questions and the more hurdles that you would have to hoop. And so simplicity is the key when it comes to, property developments. The easier and the simpler structure that you put forward in front of a development lender, the easier it would be for them to understand, okay, who is doing what, who owns what. Majority of the times there is a JV agreement that sits behind this that that also, dictates what is people's responsibilities and the rights and who can be relied upon for the agreements and who is there as a passive investor, who is there as an active investor. And they want to know a lot of these things as well. Are you raising money as an equity, and how does that do? And so, the lender would want to understand the true ownership structure of that asset as well.
Yeah. And if you can provide it in almost like a bit of like a flow chart type model, almost like an org chart to help them understand it, I think that's going to be really beneficial for them. Ultimately, we've had lenders that have been burnt before where people have used entities to be able to borrow all the money, and then funds then being, used fraudulently and things. And so really the whole idea is really understanding ultimately who owns the entities, who are the members, and then being able to weigh up sort of the risk with these people as well.
Definitely. And like the entity plays an important role as well, because then the money is tied to the entity as well, right? So it does not allow the developer to cross subsidize the money between different projects as well. And so as an investor as well, it's very important for you to understand, which is the entity which is holding the asset. And you want to ensure that your loan agreements or your caveats are with that entity, not a side development entity where a lot of developers would offer, loan agreements from, because that entity does not really have sort of say or play. They are just, while they're key decision maker, they don't have any asset to back or protect. And so a lot of people, when they fail as investments into developments, it's because of this very mistake. They don't hold anything in the entity that's holding an asset, because the banks usually would not let you, right? The banks will not let you hold anything in that entity. They'll basically say, no, this is our collateral. We don't want any third parties coming into our collateral, right? So, yeah.
And so then the next part is to assets and liabilities of the people who are the directors of the entity, particularly the people that are going to be the guarantors on the actual loan itself. So this often the lenders will put across to you. They probably have a particular format where they say, fill in all your assets and liabilities so that we can really understand and see, all else fails and the project goes to bust. Will we be able to claim the money back from the actual directors itself? And so you need to give them a detailed assets and liabilities as well.
Yes. And more importantly, and that's where, your self risk reward cycle comes into place as well, that, how risky is your personal profile. And if you have 10 other companies that are running gambling businesses, the lender would be like, no, we don't want to basically go into the business with this person.
Why not? It's so exciting.
And so I think that's where, they are coming in from that lens as to, okay, as while we have the collateral on the asset in itself, the financials of the people who are the directors of the company who are running the project as developers, we want to get personal guarantees from them and make sure that they have enough assets in play, and they'll question LVRs, etc., all of those things. How much cash in the bank, where does your LVR, your property portfolio sits, etc. So as a developer, if I talk from, the other side of the fence, you need to ensure that a lot of your assets are protected in trusts as well, and you're not holding everything under your own personal name too, right? Because you need to limit your own exposure and risks to a lot of these things. And typically, how do you go around doing that? Again, go back and speak to your lawyer. Then you don't need to leave a lot of LVRs on the table for your own even personal house. You want to extract that money out and place it into a trust too, so that, if, God forbid, touch wood, if push comes to shove, something goes down, there is nothing on the table. While there is assets on the table, the LVRs or the refinance is already being done and it's passed into a trust. And so there are various ways to go around, doing that as well. So,
yeah, absolutely. So A&Ls, if you wanted to hide all of what you own in your own portfolios and all of that, you're going to have to put it out in your A&Ls because the lenders are going to want to know. And the final thing for this section, and so we're going to be a 2-part series for this part at least, is the lenders are going to want to understand what the value is of the project, the as-is valuation, and also the as-if complete numbers. So, Moss, I'll hand it over to you. I'm going to handball. You to explain that, what that is.
A lot of developments fail there because, people, like I always use this example, you think that your kids are the best in town and they are the most handsome kids and, they are the most wonderful kids and, they're the most behaved kids in the world. But you need to test your kids out from other people's eyes. And then you would see the true value because every parents love their kids, to the end of the world. And, property development is basically that. You would think that your development is, the best development in the world and it's the best thing that you're doing in the suburb. And, people should kneel and bow to you for being, so kind to do this development for them. Understand that the lender does not care what you think of your development. The lender wants an arm's length person coming out there telling what the as if complete valuation and the final valuation of some of these products are. So that's where the valuer plays a really, really big part. You have to have a really good relationship with the valuer as well. A lot of people discount this relationship completely, as a developer. And a lot of developers learn this the hard way. Understand that each of these valuations, they are not cheap. The bigger the project, the more expensive the valuation. They can go from like $4,000 per valuation to almost $15,000 to $20,000 a valuation, okay? And every time a valuation comes in short or does not come into par to what your feasibility says, that means that you're putting more money on the table, okay? And so how do you go around making sure that the valuation comes right on the par is understanding the product market fit and being more realistic in your feasibilities and making sure that, the numbers that you're quoting out there are real numbers that you can actually achieve in today's world. The valuer is not going to think about, what is this property going to sell in 12 months time because the market is so crunched and there is high demand and no supply. They don't care. Yeah? From their perspective, what can I sell this? What would this property sell for right now as is? And if I build these, 5 townhouses or 4 townhouses here, how much each individual one would sell them for based on the quality that you're bringing in, okay? Yeah. The most trickiest one is where you're bringing out a product that has no sale in the area. No comparison. Those are the most trickiest ones because the value would take a much more conservative approach in them. And they'll basically go down the path of land value assessments completely. Okay. So they'll not take into account the emotional assessments of owner occupiers. They will not take into account even the sales that have happened right now on properties that are off the plan sales. They will not even consider those, while they are sales, but because they haven't actually sold, they will not even take them as comparable sales too. So it's important to consider all of those things when you're going down this path of valuation. So find the right valuer, make sure that you have a good relationship with the valuer. Understand also that the valuer's risk is massive. They don't want to value an overpriced project. And then if the project falls down, they lose the business from these particular lenders because they know that this valuer is much more optimistic and we don't want to use this valuer anymore. And so they have a massive credibility in the industry. So it's important from their perspective to, manage the right balance between whether they're playing from a lender's side or whether they're playing from the developer side. But if a valuer respects you and respects your development, they'll work very closely with you. They'll know that, you are just and fair and you're not off the hook and you're not smoking some crazy stuff and you're doing some of these feasibilities, right? Yeah. And that's the relationship that you need to talk about and, you need to nurture.
Yeah, and be aware as well if you're developing something that is quite niche or specific, whether it's NDIS or co-living or commercial, you might be doing childcare centers or storage. Find lenders and valuers who understand that type of product because they and really understand just what you're looking to achieve, because it's going to be a lot less of a battle trying to get your valuations to stack if compared to someone who is absolutely new to that space.
Yes. And I mean, in times like today, I think it becomes harder and harder for the valuations to stack as well, right? Because the market shifts, the interest rate goes higher, the projects that are valued at higher numbers actually starts getting valued at lower numbers as well. So the valuations do change even during the build process. I've seen developers, who had a particular valuation at the start of the project and midway through, and the development, they would get the valuer out there and get a much higher valuation and, extract the equity out from these developments. So it works both ways.
Yes.
It's about making sure that you have that relationship with the valuer, and you are helping them make an informed decision. That's the key thing. One of the key things that we do as a developer all the time is that we would provide our working files to the developer as to, okay, this is how we are valuing it. And we know that this is how you would be thinking about some of these valuations. And so these are the comparables that we have looked at. This is the build form that we are bringing out. This is what the land value is selling it at. This is where we are selling it at. And so we are doing a lot of ground up work in basically making sure that you're not just giving them a number, you're actually providing a bit of substance to that number as well. In certain projects, we go down to the level of detail where we would trigger the valuations up front. And so we are not seeking finances yet, but we would get an independent valuer to go out there and value the project for us, as a complete project for us. And yes, it costs us some money. And yes, you use this for financing, but it provides us the comfortableness that, hey, when we are going to go down the path of financing, we can use this valuation to influence the valuer as well, right? And so that's an important trick to play too, that you're using a $3,000 or $4,000, really high level valuation. But then when you are actually fronting the bank and their valuer comes out, you're using this valuation to inform their valuation or influence their valuation as well. And that's a really cool trick to play as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So ultimately, the truth is, a lot of valuations, you will find that most people are saying valuers are conservative in their nature. I mean, they've got their PI insurance to worry about. So the closer that you can work with them, the closer that you are working on a project where there is strong prior evidence, you're going to have a better outcome in terms of your valuations. And I said they do cost a fair bit each time you're doing it. So it's not something that you want to do all the time. However, if you are, like you said, you want to do a refinance or whatever that might be to extract equity, that is something that you can weigh up as a commercially, whether it's worth doing or not, partway through your bill. So, valuers, make them your best friend as much as possible. But unfortunately, there's no guarantee that they will show you the love all the time either.
Yes.
Well, there have been many frustrating stories, but when they turn out well, they do absolutely help with your project and their finance.
Definitely. And so these are the key 6 things that we talked about today. We are going to talk about another key 6 things in the next episode. Those key 6 things, just to provide you a bit more sort of a teaser, we're going to talk about the stage of the project, the equity and how does the equity gets calculated or comes through, the pre-sales, the builder, the exit strategy, the project duration, and a secret golden nugget in the next episode. So stay tuned, come back and listen to us, watch us. Keep investing, keep smiling, be kind, take care. This is Cheryl and Moss checking out. Adios.